How to write good IELTS academic task 1 report. That is the focus of this class. So to start with, we have two things that we're going to do when it comes to IELTS writing. Okay, for IELTS writing, there are two things that you will do. Number one, you will write an essay. That essay is called task 2. Task 2 essay. And that essay should not be less than 250 words. I've already talked about essay writing during some of our previous lessons. So that is the first thing that you should do on the exam day. Even though that is called task 2, I advise that students start their writing with task 2. Okay, don't start with task 1. Why? Because task 2 accounts for 67% of your total score. So it's better that you start with that and you make sure you do it well before you move to task 1. Okay, so task 2 is about essay writing. Task 1 is about writing a report. You're going to write a report of not less than 250 words. Okay, they are going to ask you to write a report, and that report is going to account for, that task 1 report is going to account for 33%, one third. That's about 33% of your total score. Okay, so when it comes to IELTS academic task 1 writing, there are 7 possible options or 7 possible questions. They can give you any one of these 7 questions. It's either they will give you a process chart to write on, or they will give you a map. You are going to write a report based on 2 maps. It could be 2 maps or 3 maps. Okay, or they will ask you to write a report based on a line graph. It could be on a line graph, or they will ask you to write a report based on a bar chart. Okay, or it could be on a pie chart. Usually they will give you 2 pie charts. That's the common thing. 2 pie charts. In rare cases they will give them one, but they will give you 1 pie chart, but the common thing is 2. Or they will ask you to write a report based on a table or combination chart. Combination chart basically is a combination of 3 to 6. It could be a question that involves combination of line graph and bar charts. They can combine line graph and pie charts. They can combine line graph and table, or they can combine bar charts and pie charts, or they can combine bar charts and table, or they can combine pie charts and table. That's what we call combination charts. Any one of these 7 questions can show up. So you should be prepared for all the 7 of them. And I'm going to show you examples of all the 7 of them, and I will show you model reports, okay, of all these 7 types of questions. And I'm going to explain some very important um, rules and guidelines. I don't like using the word tips. I don't know, people like using the word tips. I don't like using tips. Well, if you like tips, okay, let me just say, I will give you some tips. Okay, so 7 types of charts. Look at the examples. Look at the first one here, Springer from 1970 till now. This is a map report. So you have a map report here. Let me magnify this a little bit. So you have a map here. So you have 1970 map, and then you have current layout. The layout of the town of Springer town in 1970, and then you have the current layout of the town. Okay, so you have to write a report based on this map. Tell us how the town has changed over time. So this is a possible question. Then we have another one that they can give us is process charts. You can see process charts at the bottom here. How bamboo fabric is made. Okay, so it's a step-by-step process. You can see arrows from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 to step 5 to step 6 to step 7 to step 8 to step 9. So this is a what? This is a process chart question. Then you have line graph. The next one here, the graph below shows the number of overseas visitors to 3 different areas in a European country between 1987 and 2007. So we have a line graph. So you have to write a report based on this line graph. This is another type of question that can show up. Then we have pie charts. This is a pie chart question. Okay, 1995 energy production from different sources. in 1995. Then you have energy production from different sources in what? In 2005. Write a report based on this. Okay. Then you have bar charts. You see bar chart here. The bar chart shows the amount of energy generated by wind in 4 countries from 1985 to 2000. Amount of energy generated by wind. So we are writing, you have to write they can ask you to write a report on something like this. And then the last one is combination charts. You can see it here. Here you have a combination of pie charts and table. So you have to write a report based on this thing. The first thing you do is first write a report based on the pie charts, and then after that, write on the table. Okay? So basically, they can give you any of the 7 types of what? Of questions. So it's good to be familiar with all the 7 types of questions. Okay? Now, your report should have 3 major components. How many? 3 major components. The first one is what we call the introduction. The introduction. The introduction basically is the part of the report that introduces what you want to write about. It gives the reader an idea of, okay, what am I expecting to read here? Okay, what is this report about? Okay, so usually in writing your report, you start with something like this. The charts illustrates the blah blah blah. The chart illustrates the XYZ. The table illustrates the XYZ. The maps illustrates the changes that have happened, or the changes that will happen, or the changes that took place. Do you understand? The map, the drawing, okay, the diagram depicts the XYZ. I mean, that's how you write your word. That's how you start your introduction. I'm going to show you examples later. Don't worry. So that's the first part of your report. Your introduction should paraphrase the question prompt. I'm going to show you what that means very soon. And it should also what? It should also indicate the categories. It should indicate the timeline. I'm going to show you that later on. So the first component of your report is the introduction. The second component is the overview. The overview gives us an overall picture of what is happening. Okay? An overall picture of what is happening. The overview is a kind of conclusion. Overview is a kind of conclusion. The difference is just that a conclusion shows up at the end of your work, of your essay. If you remember what I taught you when we treated essay writing, we said that at the end of the essay there should be a paragraph for concluding your points. That's the conclusion. Okay? So the conclusion shows up at the end. But in this case, we are not writing a conclusion for our report. So we don't need to write a conclusion. The overview is doing the job of the conclusion. So it gives us an overall picture of what is happening, of what the chart or what the report is about. So that's the second part of your report. The overview can contain 1 sentence. It can contain 2 sentences. You understand? Introduction too can contain 1 sentence. Introduction can be 2 sentences. The choice is yours. You can look at what you have and decide, okay, how many sentences do I want to give this thing? Hope you get my point now. And then the final part of the report is the main body. The main body is the place where you discuss the report in detail. There's a particular question tag that you are going to see in your report question. They will say summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparison where relevant. So this particular thing I wrote here, we are going to see it show up in all academic task 1 questions. It will show up at the end. They will write it there at the end. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparison, or they will say making comparison where relevant, or they will say and make comparison where relevant. So this thing that they are saying here is what you do in the main body. That's where you now begin to what? You report the main features, this particular part here. So the first part, summarize the information. That's what you do in the introduction and the overview. Then this part, reporting the main features, that's what you do in the main body. You report the main features, and then you make comparison where relevant. In other words, in some reports, you will not be able to really make comparison. There will really be no comparison to make. But in many reports, you'll be able to make comparison. So that's what you do in the word in the main body, making comparison where relevant. Okay, so our report should have how many components, ladies and gentlemen? Our report should have 3 components. What are the 3 components? Introduction, overview, and what? And the main body. Those are the 3 components that should show up. When we see examples, we're going to look at some examples very soon. You're going to see all these 3 components in our report. Now, look at this one here. This is just to illustrate my point about what? About the 3 parts of your report. So this is the report about bamboo fabric. That one I showed earlier on. This one here, the left bottom corner. Bottom left corner. I think that's how they say it. Bottom left corner. So how bamboo fabric is made. Look at it here. The diagram below shows how fabric is manufactured from bamboo. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. And make comparison where relevant. Can you see what I said earlier on? And make comparison where what? Where relevant. So I have decided to split the thing so that you see the different parts. Introduction, the charts. So in writing your introduction, give us an idea of what the report is about. Okay, paraphrase the question prompt. Look at this part here. The diagram below shows how fabric is manufactured from bamboo. That's the question prompt. Okay, that's the question prompt. And that's what I've paraphrased here. The chart, instead of saying diagram, I wrote the word chart. Okay, illustrates, instead of saying shows, I wrote illustrates. Okay, illustrates. The chart illustrates the manufacture. Can you see the paraphrasing I've done here? I have rearranged. That's one of the ways you paraphrase. In the question prompt, what did they write? How fabric is manufactured. Fabric comes before manufacture in the question prompt. But I have rearranged it and I put manufacture before fabric. The chart illustrates the manufacture of fabric from bamboo plants. Somebody says, why did you add plants? Bamboo is a plant, so you can add plants. That's okay, it's allowed. Bamboo is a plant. Okay? And then if you look at it, they even wrote plant here. Look at the drawing. You can see that plant, bamboo plants. Can you see? So this is my introduction. You can see that it is just it's one sentence, it's a one sentence introduction. After the introduction, we'll move to the overview. Overall, it is clear that a linear process. So this is a linear process. What is a linear process? A linear process is a process that starts at a point and ends at another point that is not connected to the starting point. The opposite of linear process is cyclical process. Okay, so this one is a linear process. Overall, it is clear that the linear process occurs in 9 steps. Look at it, they've even numbered it for us. In some cases, they will not number it. If they don't number it for you, just count the number of drawings. Okay, the number of drawings will help you to figure out the number of steps. So it is clear that the linear process occurs in 9 steps, and the major raw materials are what? Bamboo plants. That's my overview. So when it comes to a process chart, to write your overview, tell us the number of steps or tell us the major ingredients involved, the major ingredients that are used during the process. Or you can just do both. In this case, I did both. Okay, that's overview. And then after the overview, what do? We move to the main body. So look at this one here. Here I have combined everything into one report. You can see that the report looks neat here now. And this is exactly how your report should look like. You don't need to be putting introduction. You write introduction, now write something. Write overview, now write. No, no, no. You don't need all these things in red. They are not needed. Don't bother. This is just for educational purposes. This thing I put in red to show you the 3 parts. So here is what your report should look like whenever you are practicing, whenever you want to write a report and send it to me to assess. Okay? Overall, it is clear that the linear process occurs in 9 steps and the major raw materials are bamboo plants. Now, we now move to the main body. The production of bamboo, okay, there's a mistake here. This thing here should be what? Fabric. The production of fabric. Okay, that's what should be here. The production of fabric begins during the spring season with the planting of bamboo trees. Okay, with the planting of what? Bamboo trees. During autumn, autumn is the next season after spring. During autumn, the plants are harvested and the stems of the plant are cut into strips using a circular cutting device that has serrated teeth. Serrated, you can see this zigzag stuff. This zigzag stuff on the what's it called? Cutting device. That's what we refer to as serrated teeth. Using a circular cutting device that has serrated teeth. Okay, so can you say I've moved from step one, I've reached step three? So I'm describing step by step. That's how you do process chart. After this, the strips are crushed. That's step four. Crush strips. The strips are crushed and converted into what? Liquid pulp. The pulp, can you see there's a little mistake here? This should be capital T. The pulp is then filtered, semicolon. This filtration process results in the separation of long fibers from the liquid components. Can you see that step 5? So I'm using the drawings and the labeling on each drawing. So you have a big drawing, but inside that big drawing, we have many small drawings. We have here now, for this particular example, we have 9 small drawings. So I'm using the small drawings to determine what I will write. So the examiners want you to be able to look at the drawings, look at the labelings on the drawings to decide what to write. Hope you are getting my point. Let me be sure you guys are following me. Who is with me? If you are with me, let me see your message. I want you to drop a message in the chat box. Let me know if you are following me. Let me see you. Just type in the chat box and say, yes, I am with you. Let me know who is following me. Let me know who is with me. Let me see who is. Let me see if you guys are still with me. All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. I can see your feedback. Okay. So let's proceed. So the pulp is then filtered. The pulp is then what? Filtered. This place here. This is the filtration process. The pulp is then filtered. This filtration process results in the separation of long fibers from liquid components. And the fibers are used for the next step. You can see that here, step 6 is fiber we are seeing here. So that means the thing that moves from step 5 to step 6 is fiber. The liquid part, they didn't say anything about it. They are not saying anything about the liquid part. So we just proceed with the fiber. So the fibers are immersed in a mixture of water and amine oxide. Can you see here? Soften the fiber. In bracket, add water and amine oxide. So you can see this circular thing. I'm guessing that, this is representing water and amine oxide. And then the thing inside is representing the fiber. Okay? So what is the idea behind adding water and amine oxide? Is to soften the fiber. So the fibers are immersed in a mixture of water and amine oxide so as to soften them and prepare them for what? For spinning. Once the fibers are spun, they are woven and used to make the desired fabric. Can you see that? And this fabric is then used to what? Is then used to produce what? Is then used to make different kinds of clothing materials like what? Shirts or socks. Can you see that? Like shirts or socks. So you see the report. Very straightforward. Describe what you can see. That's what we do when it comes to what? Our process chart report. I hope you get my point. So you see, I'm going to share this PDF file with you. I have a PDF compilation of 35, look at this thing here, 35 task 1 report. I'm going to share it with you so that you can see plenty. There are lots of examples here. Lots of examples, process charts. Look at process charts from report 28. to 33 process chart. Then we have maps too. Okay, I'm going to share it with you. So let me treat map now. Let's look at this book and look at examples of maps. There are like 2 or 3 maps here. Okay, so look at this map here. Let me use this one. So this is a map here. The map shows the map below shows changes in the Spanish city of Castellon in recent times. So we have Castellon in 2000, Castellon today. Okay, so in writing your map report, what do you do? The same pattern, 3-part pattern. What are the 3 parts? Introduction, overview, and your what? Main body. So look at the report carefully. Introduction. So in the introduction, what is the person writing? The maps. So we have 2 maps. Notice we have 2 maps. So that's why we have the maps. Compare the present day layout of a city in Spain. What's the name of that city? Castellon. So you can say I put comma because I want to mention the name and then I marked it off with another comma. This is what we call what? This is what we call appositive. Appositives are marked off with commas. Appositives can be identified if you remove this Castellon and you continue the sentence will still make sense. The maps compare the present day layout of a city in Spain with the layout of that city in the year 2000. You can see it makes sense. So this Castellon is an appositive, is not a compulsory thing. It's just giving us some extra information about the name of the city. Okay? Now, it is evident. So this second part I'm reading now is the overview. Is the what? Is the overview. So in writing your overview for a map report, what you have to do is what? Just highlight the major changes that took place. Okay? Highlight the what? The major changes that took place. Let me tell you the changes that you need to look for. When writing your map reports, what are the changes to look for? Number 1, look for new things that were introduced. Look for new things that were introduced. Number 2, look for old things that were removed. Number 3, look for old things that were repurposed or modified. I think I should put that in capital. Modified or repurposed. What is the meaning of repurposed? Repurposed means they were using it for something before, but now they are using it for something else. Okay? So these are the 3 things to look for. Look for new things that were introduced or that have been introduced or that will be. Can you see 3 tenses I'm using here now? Where? We use where when it comes to what? Past tense maps. Okay? In other words, if the 2 dates on the 2 maps, the dates on the 2 maps are past, then you're going to use words like where. But if you have something like what you have here now, Castellon in 2000 and Castellon today, you are going to use present perfect tense. That's what have been. That's present perfect tense. Okay, and then we have future tense. That's will be. Future tense, not future perfect, future tense. Those are the 3 tenses possible for map reports. So for this report now that we have, today, the tense to use is going to be what? Have been. Okay, either you say have been or you say has been. Okay, let me construct this a sentence, for example, and then we're going to look at the map. This one now, look at this place here now. Can you see this thing here? This thing where my red highlighter is. Everybody, I want you to look at it. You can see that there's a car here. What does that tell you? It tells you that what? This is a road for cars. This is a road for cars. But if you look at the map for today, you can see that we are not seeing cars there. What are we seeing here? We are seeing footsteps. That means that this road has been converted into a what? A walkway. Cars can no longer use it. That's what I mean by what? Repurposed. They were using it for something before, but now they are using it for something else. Another one is this city center. You can see that this city center in 2000, nothing is there. Or let's say nothing was there. They weren't really using it for anything significant in 2000. But today, what are we seeing here? There's a bike rental scheme that operates there. Okay? So this one can be treated in terms of, okay, repurpose, or it can be treated in terms of new things have been introduced. Okay? So I will look for new things that have been introduced. So many new things have been introduced. I can see all of residence. Okay? I can see police station. So this one here now, you can see that police station is like in the same spot where train station was. So that's like replaced. This thing was replaced. This train station was replaced. And a new train station was constructed in this empty space. So these are things that you look out for. I want you to take note of these things I've written here, everybody. Okay? Very, very important. Very, very important. Now let's look at the, what's it called? Let's look at the map carefully. I'm sorry, let's look at the report. Sorry. Let's look at the reports now, and then we're going to move to some other things. Okay, so look at the overview. It is evident that the port city has developed remarkably into a large and busy metropolitan area. Can you see? This person is giving us a general picture. It has developed. It has become a busy place. A large, busy metropolitan area with numerous infrastructure for commerce. What's the meaning of commerce? You can see a new shop. You can see new covered market. You can see new shopping center. Those things are pointing at commerce. Entertainment, you can see cinema, you can see bars and clubs. That's entertainment. And more efficient transportation system. What's the transportation system? You can see we have airports under construction. We have tram line, that's transportation. We have new train station, that's transportation. We have bike rental scheme, that's transportation. That serve its residents. Can you see that? That's overview. Overview means what? Overview give us a general picture of what you can see on the map. And then after that, you now move to the word. You describe the first map. In the next paragraph, you now describe the first map. In this case, our first map is Castellon in year 2000. And that's what the writer does here. In 2000, Castellon had a major roadway for cars. Can you see? This is the road. Situated a few kilometers away from the port, running from the east to the west. Beside the city center to the west, the old market was situated. I want you to notice that. Look at the city center here. So to the west is on this side, the left side of the map. Okay? Somebody says, how do you know north, south, east, west? That is a primary school or secondary school stuff. Okay? So I want you to just register this in your mind now. Whenever you are dealing with a map, just draw an imaginary line. Okay? Draw an imaginary line like this. Okay? Like what I'm drawing on the board on the screen now. North is at the top, south is at the bottom, east is on the right side, and then west is on the left side. Okay? So this is what we call the cardinal points for maps. This is what we call the cardinal points for maps. So this thing here, what this writer wrote here, it says that what? Running from east to west. You can as well say from west to east. But usually the common thing is people say from east to west. So the next thing is out beside the city center to the west. So look at it here. Can you see this is the city center? To the west. Can you see? West is to the left. This is the city center here. So if I draw my map, my cardinal points here, what is going to be to the west? The old market is going to be to the west. That's what the person wrote here. Beside the city center to the west, the old market was situated. And north of the old market, north, so this is the old market here. To the north, some people will say above the old market. Above, that's not good vocabulary as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so it's just like saying that you want to build a train station on top of a market. You can't build something on top of a market. Okay, so you cannot say above. So it's better to say to the north. To the north of the old market, there was a train station. North of the city center, there was a university with about 4 blocks of building, and there were numerous trees and vegetation eastward. So north of the city center, university building. So one, two, three, four. And then lots of vegetations to the what? To the east. Or you can say to the right of those university buildings. Okay? So you can use the words right, left, or you can use east, west. But when it comes to north and south, it's better to just stick to north and south. All right? Then, so this person has described the old map in paragraph 2. See the old map described in paragraph 2 here. And then after that, you now describe the new map. So in describing the new map, you now begin to highlight the changes. I gave you the 3 changes to highlight earlier on. You begin to highlight the word, highlight the changes. So look at it, everybody. Look at it closely. Today, while a few old features remain intact, some have been modified. Can you see my tenses? Have been. Why? Because the map is for today. Assuming they wrote 2010, Castellon 2010. What I'm going to say is that word, some were modified. W-E-R-E. Some were modified. And a lot of new facilities have been introduced. The city now operates a bike rental scheme to facilitate movement around the city center. The major roadway running from the east to the west has been converted into a pedestrian walkway. Can you see what I said earlier on? Has been converted. Cars can no longer use it. The land area between this pedestrian walkway and the port has been developed and some recreational facilities developed. A cinema can be seen to the west and some bars and clubs can be seen on the east. Can you see? Cinema to the west, bars and clubs to the east. Can you see? West, east. Okay? The old market located to the west of the city center has been demolished and a new shop has been constructed. Northward of this new shop, a police station has been constructed. Can you see? Northward of this new shop, a police station, okay, has been constructed. This has replaced, can you see that? The train station that was at that site previously. The university now has a hall of residence situated westward its main building. Hall of residence situated westward its main buildings. Okay? The vegetations on the east of those buildings have been cleared. So we clear vegetation. I always like to emphasize this. You don't demolish vegetation. You clear vegetation. You demolish buildings. Okay? You don't demolish vegetations. You clear vegetations. You clear vegetation. Moving down southward, the shopping center, the city's airport is being, can you see the way I use being? Being means the process is going on. Look at it. Airport under construction. That's why I use the word being. B-E-I-N-G. That is how you use B-E-I-N-G when it comes to process chart reports. Okay, when it comes to map reports. We don't use B-E-I-N-G in process chart report. That people use it a lot, but it's not appropriate. For process chart report, they tend to use is present simple tense. That's what you will see that's what I used in that other report that I gave earlier on, this particular report here. You will not see the word being. I did not say that after this, the strips are being crushed. The strips are being crushed and converted to pulp. No, 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 no. You can't use being because it's not an ongoing process. It's a present simple tense. It's something that happens all the time. Anytime you want to make fabric. So what you do is what? You use present simple tense. So you cannot use the word being. Okay? So here we use being because we are referring to something that is ongoing. And then a train station has been constructed. It is located between the city center and the university. Also, a tram line has been installed to connect the city center to the university. So that's it. Map report, introduction, overview, and the what? And the main body. That's it. So the next thing is what I call data-based charts. If you remember what I said earlier on, we have 7 types of, what's it called? 7 types of reports. You have process charts, we've talked about that. We have maps, we've talked about that. Then we have number 3 to number 7. These are the things I call data-based charts. Let me type that out for you. Data, we call them data-based charts. Why? Because for those kinds of questions, you are going to be seeing figures, 300, 40, 10%, 6,000, 3 million, 400, 5,000. You're going to be seeing figures representing data. Okay? So we call them data-based charts. And there are 5 of them. You have line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, and what? And table, and then we have combination charts. So to write these kinds of reports, you still follow the same pattern of what? Introduction, overview, and what? Main body. So here we have an example of a line graph report. Okay? So if I want to write an introduction for this report now, what will I use? I'll use my question prompt, just like I said earlier on. Use your question prompt. Paraphrase the question prompt. Look at it. The line graph illustrates, okay, the changes in the number. I need to emphasize this number. Don't use amount. Amount is used for uncountable items like water. Amount of water. Amount is used for uncountable items like air, oxygen, petrol. Okay? Amount of petrol, amount of salt, amount of milk. But when it comes to countable items like human beings, people, you don't use amount. Just use your number. And you can't use quantity either. Quantity and amount, they are basically synonymous. Quantity is also for what? Uncountable items. Okay? Changes in the number of tourists. Overseas visitors can also be paraphrased as tourists. In the number of tourists that visited 3 different regions, or let's use the word parts, of a European country between 1987 and 2007. Can you see my introduction? Let me give you a formula for introduction when it comes to database charts. The formula for introduction, is what? What plus where plus when. What is what? What represents what? This thing that says what? Changes in the number of tourists that visited 3 different parts of a European country. That's the what. The what is usually always the longest. Then where refers to the what? The European country. Germany, Italy, France, Denmark, okay, Spain. That's the where. And then the date usually show up last. When. This order is what you should follow. Don't put when before the where. That's bad cohesion. Okay, so this is a formula to use when it comes to writing your introduction. So look at my introduction here now. So after this introduction, what's the next thing I'll do? The next thing is to write my what? Is to write my, okay, in fact, let me even ask. What is the next thing after my introduction? Who can tell me? After introduction, what is the next thing to write? I want you to type in the chat box. What is the next thing to write after introduction? Anybody who wants to try? Who wants to give me the response? Thank you. Overview. You write your overview. So in writing your overview, you need to use what we call, there's something I call language of trend. I'm going to talk about that later on. So here, You just describe the categories that increased, describe the categories that reduced, and the categories that fluctuated. So I'm looking at this thing now. I can see that the number of visitors to the coast reduced initially and then it increased. So I can generally basically say that what it increased. So somebody can look at this blue and say, okay, the number increased. Another person can look at this and say the number fluctuated. For the gray one, visitors to the lakes, it increased, and then in 2000, after 2002, it reduced. That's a kind of fluctuation, just like the color blue. And then for the mountain, that one increased throughout. So to write my overview here, I can just report fluctuation for the blue and the gray, and then for the red one, I will report increase. So look at my overview here. I will say that word overall, overall, the number of visitors that went to the mountains increased throughout the period. Semicolon. However, there was a fluctuation in the number of those that visited the coast and the what? Lakes. That's my overview. Fluctuation means that what? The figure went up and then came down. That's one way to look at fluctuation. Or the figure went down and came up. So for the blue one, coast, you can see that the figure went down and then it went up. But for the lakes, the figure went up and then it came down. Those two things can be regarded as what? Fluctuations. So what happens after my overview? The next thing I write after my overview is the what? Is the main body. So in writing my main body, I'll first of all write about the mountains. To start with, in 1987, 20,000 tourists visited the mountains. Okay? 20,000. Look at it here, everybody. This thing is 20. Where did I say 1,000? Look at it, thousands here. So all these figures here represent 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. You understand? So in 1987, 20,000 visitors or 20,000 individuals visited the mountains. And this figure increased steadily every year until what? 2007, when about 35,000 visitors were recorded. Okay? Lower than the number of visitors that went to the lakes and the coast that year. You see that last thing I said? Lower than, that's what? Comparison. Remember what I said earlier on? Make comparison where relevant. Make comparison where relevant. Okay? So you must compare somehow. So that's the first thing I will do. And then next one, I will now talk about what? I'll talk about visitors to the lakes. I'll describe it. Then I'll talk about this one last. So the idea is what? Take one category. This thing here, this red line, visitors to the mountains, is what I'm calling category. This one here, gray one, visitors to the lakes, is what I call category. Color blue represents number of visitors to the coast. Those are called categories. I want you to notice what I'm saying. Notice that when I refer to this color blue, I did not say the coast. Some people will look at this and they will say that word. To start with, the coast was 40,000 in 1987. In 1987, the coast was 40,000. No. That's bad sentence construction. This thing here is not just the coast. It represents what? Number of visitors to the coast. So you cannot just say the coast was 40,000. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. These are things you look out for to be sure that what you are constructing your sentences correctly. This is extremely important. Okay? So after describing the changes in number of visitors to the mountains, Next, you describe everything from the beginning to the end. Okay? Next, you now move toward the number of visitors to the lakes. Then you now move to number of visitors to the coast. That's how you do your work, your line graph report. Okay? Now, I want to explain a very important concept here when it comes to bar charts, pie charts, and table. You see this thing here? Bar charts, pie charts, and table. There's something that you need to be conversant with when it comes to writing those reports. You need to pay attention to something I call languages. Languages. Okay? We have two languages when it comes to writing our academic task one report, especially data-based charts, reports for data-based charts. There are two languages that we can use. Okay? The first one is called language of trend. Assuming we are doing a physical class, I will have said, somebody say trend. Language of trend. Okay? When it comes to language of trend, there are some words that should show up. These are the words that represent language of trend. Increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. Okay? Language of trend. These are the four words. So anytime somebody writes a sentence and I see these words in that sentence, if somebody writes a sentence for me now and I see these words in that sentence, any of these words in that sentence, any one of them, or any of their paraphrases. So instead of saying increase, somebody can say rise. Instead of saying decrease, somebody can say reduce, decline. Okay? So if I see any of these four words, what it means is that that person is using the language of trend. Okay? Then we have the language of comparison. These are the words that represent language of comparison. Interestingly, these are not the only words that represent language of comparison. There are many other words that can be used for language of comparison. Many other words. Many. The list is long. But for language of trend, these are the only four words that you can use. Is either you use these four words or use the paraphrases of these four words. Okay? So for language of comparison, you have words like most common, least common, greater, lesser, fewer. Can you see that fewer is not on this list? Fewer. 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 Like I said, there are many other words that are not on this list. It's a very long list. So these two languages, you must use them correctly. There is a time to use language of trend. There is a time when you cannot use language of trend. And that takes us to this black box at the bottom here. If the graph has two or more dates, then you should use both language of trend and language of comparison. Okay? If the graph has what? Two or more dates, what should you use? Language of trend and language of comparison. But if the graph has just one date, then you are to use only the word. You are to use only the language of comparison. If the graph has just one date, or if it has no date, you have to use only the language of what? Compare. In other words, these are the things that we should see there. So you should not use language of trend. If a graph has just one date, or if it does not have any date, you are not to use language of trend at all. Avoid language of trend. Use only the language of comparison. Let me show you what I mean. Look at this graph here. Look at this graph here. Let me type two sentences for you. Sentence one. There was an increase in the share of expenditure on food. That is sentence one. Okay? The share of expenditure on food increased across the four countries. Sentence number three. You are going to tell me the sentence that is correct. Okay? Sentence number three is that word. Japan spent, Japan had the largest share of expenditure on food. Ladies and gentlemen, which of these three sentences is the most accurate? Which of these three sentences is the most what? Is the most accurate? Who can tell me? Anybody? Which of these three sentences is the most accurate? Is the most appropriate? Anybody? Somebody says sentence one. Okay? I'm going to talk about that very soon. Another person says sentence one. You better pick your answer based on what you think. Don't pick because somebody has picked that word, something. No. Okay. Oh. Because some people, when we do classes, like some people pick an answer because somebody picked it. Pick your answer for yourself and be sure of your reason. Okay? I just said, let me say that because somebody wrote one, another person now wrote one. Let me be sure that you're not writing one because somebody wrote one. Okay. So somebody picked one, somebody picked three, somebody picked two. Okay. So we have some people have picked everything. Now, let me tell you the correct thing. The correct sentence is actually sentence number three. That is the correct sentence. Sentence one is rubbish. Sentence two is nonsense. Sentence three is the correct thing. Why? Because nothing increased there. There was an increase. There's nothing that increased. If you say something increased, what it basically means is that yesterday it was 50. Today it is now 60. That is the meaning of increased. If you say something increased, what it means is that in 2004 it was 5,000. Today it is now 10,000. That is increase. But if you look at this diagram on the screen, you can see that we have only 2009 here. If you say the food increased, what does this black wall represent? Does it represent 2008? What does this blue bar represent? Does it represent 2010? Does it red bar represent 2015? No, it doesn't represent years. It represents countries. So nothing is increasing. That's why number one is rubbish. Number two is nonsense. Nothing increased. Can you see language of trend that they are using here? That's what I mean when I said what I said earlier on that what? Whenever your what's it called? Your graph has just one date. Look at it. Oh, please take note of this thing. If your graph has just one date or it doesn't have any date, use only language of comparison. Avoid language of trend. You cannot use words like increased. Words like increased cannot show up at all. That's why number one and number two are rubbish and nonsense. Number three is the most appropriate. Japan had the largest share of expenditure on food. Okay? Now I'm going to give everybody exercise. Everybody, I want you to write a sentence for transportation. I want you to write a sentence for transportation and post it in the Zoom chat. I want you all to write a sentence for transportation. Write a sentence for transportation and post it in the Zoom chat. I'm going to respond to, let me just see what you guys will come up with. Write something for transportation and post it in the Zoom chat. Something similar to what I wrote here. Write something to describe transportation. Write a sentence to describe the figures for transportation and post it in the Zoom chat. Okay, I'm waiting. I'm waiting, everybody. Oh. I want you to send in your answer. Let me see. Let me see who's going to come up with the most appropriate sentence. And then we're going to do some corrections. Who has written something? I'm waiting. Oh, are you guys writing or you are waiting for me? You guys should write though. Okay. Okay, I can see one answer here. Thank you very much for that. Please, I want you to drop your answer so that you will learn. Let's do some corrections. Our job here is for you to be corrected, it's for you to learn and be corrected. So just type a sentence to describe what you can see for what? For the for transportation. Okay? And then I'll make corrections. You will learn. Okay, don't wait for somebody else to type their own and then you'll be left learning from that person. Type your own too. I want to see like three responses and then I'm going to make corrections. So I've seen one response now. I'm waiting for two more responses. I'm waiting for two more responses. Okay? I'm waiting for two more responses. So you guys, okay? Send in your answer. Okay, very good. I've seen another response. Thank you very much for that. I love that. That's good. I like feedbacks like this. We're gonna we're gonna do the corrections. So who is going to give us the third one? I'm waiting though. All right. Okay, very good. I've seen some more responses now. Okay, so let me pick the responses one by one and then we are going to make corrections. So the first one, somebody said Canada has the most expenditure on transportation. All right. So this person, let me check whether that is accurate. Canada is color blue. Yes, that's accurate. So that in terms of Canada being the um, largest figure, that's accurate. But I will not use the word most. Most expenditure. No, we not use the word most. Why? Most is not to be used for quantitative figures like this. I think that's how I should say it. Most is used for qualitative things. For example, most beautiful. When you say XYZ is the most beautiful girl in the class, you say Rita is the most beautiful girl in the class. How did you count that beauty? You did not count it. It's a qualitative thing. That's when you use the word most. Most intelligent. Okay, most so we use most for something that is qualitative, but for something that can be counted, like in this case now, there's a way they calculate expenditure. They can calculate it, or we can, I don't want to use the word count. Calculate is the more appropriate word. For things that can be calculated, we use the word largest. Okay, so Canada has the word, and then another correction here is the word HAS. You cannot say Canada has because the figure is from 2009. Okay, so it's going to be what? Canada had the largest expenditure on transportation. Canada had the largest expenditure on what? Transportation. So that's your correction for that. Another person said Japan has the least expenditure on transportation. Okay, so least is good here. Least can be used for both qualitative and quantitative things. So, but the word as is wrong because this data is in the past, 2009. So we should say what? Japan had the least expenditure. Japan had the least expenditure on what? Transportation. Then another person says Canada incurred the highest costs on transportation. Okay, highest costs. Canada incurred the highest costs. All right, so my issue with this one is costs. This figure is not giving us cost, it's giving us percentage share. Assuming the figures are in dollars or pounds or euros, then you can say costs. Okay, so we don't really know the cost that they spent, the costs. Okay, that's my correction for this, your answer here. Canada incurred the highest cost. So the ideal thing should have been Canada incurred the I don't even know whether we can use incurred for this thing I want to say now. So incurred is connected to cost. So Canada spent the largest fraction of expenditure on transportation, or Canada reported, or Canada recorded the largest or the highest fraction of expenditure on transportation. Another person said Canada had the highest expenditure on transportation, while Japan had the lowest. Very good. There's practically nothing to correct here. Canada had the highest expenditure. Okay, highest. Okay, let me add something here. Highest share of expenditure. It should be share. The word share should be there. Canada had the highest share of expenditure on transportation, while Japan had the lowest. Okay. Then another person says Canada has the most. I've talked about this issue of most. So most is not the appropriate thing here. Okay. The better qualitative, the better modifier to use, or determiner to use, is going to be largest. Either you say largest or highest. I think I prefer largest. Okay. Canada had the largest expenditure on transportation. So please take note of that. Again, when do we use language of trend? When do we use language of comparison only? Whenever we see that we have just one date on our chart, we can use word language of comparison. So this rule I'm giving you, it's applicable to bar charts. It's also applicable to pie charts. And look at these two pie chart now. I'm going to ask a question now, okay, to be sure you have gotten this issue about language. Look at this one here. This one about coal energy production. This one about migration. Okay? Let's ask a question about this one first. What language should I use here? Should I use both language, or I will use only language of comparison? I want you guys to answer. What language am I to use for this particular chart? Both language of trend and comparison, or will I use only the language of comparison? Who can tell me? Anybody for this particular pie chart question? Are we to use both language of trend and comparison, or we are to use only the language of comparison? Thank you very much. Both. We are to use both. Why are we to use both? Go back to the reason. The reason is that if the graph has two or more dates, you can see that we have two dates here. 1995 is one date or 1 year. 2005 is another year. So we can use both. So you can say that the proportion of energy produced from coal increased. Is allowed. You can do that one here. It increased because in 1995 it was 29.8. In 2005 it increased to 30.93. It increased. You can use language of what? Language of trend here. You can also use language of comparison. For you to use language of comparison, that means you just focus on 1995 only. And you say that energy produced from coal was the largest. Or you can say the largest proportion of energy was produced from coal. Okay? Closely followed by what? Gas and petrol. Largest. So you just focus on 1 year if you want to use language of comparison. If you want to use language of trend, you go across the 2 years. And you say that the fraction of energy produced from coal increased. The fraction of energy produced from petrol also increased. So you can say the fraction of energy produced from coal and petrol increased during the period, whereas the proportion or the fraction produced from petrol reduced. You can see petrol was 29 and then it reduced to what? It reduced to 19. Okay? What of this one, ladies and gentlemen? What language are we to use here? I want you to tell me the language and tell me the reason. What language are we to use for this question? Tell me the language and tell me the reason. Anybody? What language are we to use here? The language and the reason. I want you to tell me, everybody. Anybody? Okay? Why? Okay, thank you very much. We are to use language of comparison. Why? Because we have just one date. What is the one date? 2007. So in writing my sentence, let me just give you some sentences to illustrate what I'm trying to say. What we are to write is what you write something like this. You say that, so let's look at formal study now. You can see that formal study is 26% for immigration. Formal study is 4% for immigration. Okay, so you see that word. Okay, I want to use language, so let me just focus on that. So, um, which one is the largest here? 30, that's color green, definite job. Okay, the majority of individuals that migrated into the UK in 2007 moved in because they secured a definite job in the country. Can you see the sentence I wrote here? You can see that I used my creativity to answer, to write this, to reflect this thing that about definite job. The question says the main reason for migration to and from UK. Immigration means that they are coming into UK. Immigration means they are leaving UK. Now, some people will look at all these things in the box, formal study, definite job. Some people will say something like, look at this thing I want to write here. This thing I want to write here is rubbish. Is rubbish English. Some people write something like this. Definite job accounted for 30% of immigration into the UK. This thing is not, what's the meaning of definite job? You should, your sentence should be, clearer than this. So they moved it because they secured the what? They secured a definite job. Hope you get my point now. Look at this one for color red. Accompany, join. What does that suggest? Accompany, join. That means they moved to the UK because they what? Because they accompanied somebody or because they wanted to join somebody, right? So how do I write that? Let's write a sentence for that. We said that what? 15% of individuals, 15% of individuals that moved to the UK moved because they either accompanied someone or they wanted to join someone. Can you see? So whenever you are looking at your charts, study the labels closely and make sure that in writing your sentences are as clear as possible. Your sentences must be as what? They must be as clear as possible. Hope you get my point. So, data-based charts. So let's go back to our 35 report booklets. Let me just pick 2 or 3 examples of data-based charts from this booklet. I'm going to share this booklet with you in the group, in the WhatsApp group, so that you can study it closely and learn from it. So let me pick bar charts. Okay. Let me pick this one. This one here. Look at this question here. Let me ask a question here. What language are we to use here? Language of trend and comparison or language of comparison only? Anybody who wants to tell me? I want you to tell me the language and tell me the reason. Let me see who can figure that out. What language are we to use here? Comparison only or trend and comparison? Which one of the two? Comparison only or trend and comparison? What language are we to use here? Okay, somebody says both. Somebody says comparison, just one date. Okay, now this is a little bit, this is where you need to pay close attention. You need to pay close attention here. We actually do not have one date here. We actually have multiple dates. If you look at it, even though you have just 2019 here, look at the bottom. January, February, March, April. Those are different dates. Can you see now? So these are tricks you also need to look out for. Okay, don't just say that okay because it's just 2019. You now say it's one date. No, still look at it closely. You understand now? So this is going to be what the language to use is going to be both. We are going to be using both languages. Okay, January represents a date, February represents a date, March represents a date, April represents a date. So in some cases they can even use week one, week two, week three, week four. That's still multiple dates. Okay, now let's look at the report. The bar chart provides data about the online sales of three electronic gadgets. What are the gadgets? Dash. And I listed the gadgets. Laptops, tablets, and smartphones. And then I put another dash to show that I've stopped listing. In the first 4 months of 2019, January, February, March, April, the sales volumes for each of these devices are reported in millions of units. Overall, there was a decrease in the sales of laptops during the first 3 months. Look at it, laptops. That's overview. Laptop is the first one. Laptop was about 50. It reduced to 30. It reduced to 20 something. Can you see? It reduced in the first 3 months. And then it increased. That's overall. There was a decrease in the sales of laptop during the first 3 months, followed by a rise in the fourth month. However, the sales volumes of smartphones and tablets increased during the first 3 months, but dropped in the fourth month. Can you see overall? Very straightforward. The overall give us a general picture of what is on the chart. So you see the language of trend used there. There was a decrease. Can you see language of trend? Followed by a rise, language of trend, and then increased. So in the main body, what the person will now do is that what the person will now pick those gadgets one by one. Look at it. In January, more laptops were sold. Can you see language of comparison? More laptops. I'm not sure if more is on that list. Let me check that list that I gave you earlier on. More. Can you see that more is okay? More. Number 10 is there. More. Though it's more popular, but more. Just pick this part. In January, more laptops were sold. Can you see we are making comparison where relevant? Where is it? Making comparison where relevant. Can you see comparison being done here? More laptops were sold than any other gadget. Look at it. Can you see laptop is the biggest? The others are lower than laptops. The sales of laptops was the biggest. More laptops were sold than any other gadget represented on the chart. Semicolon. 50 million units of laptops were sold that month, compared to tablets and smartphones that sold 30 million units and 20 million units respectively. So how do we use this thing respectively? You see the arrangement. Tablets before smartphone. What it basically now means is that what? Tablet is for what? 30 million. Smartphone is for what? 20 million. That is the meaning of respectively. To show that, okay, the arrangement I followed for the first list is the arrangement for the second list. What is the first list? Tablet before smartphone. So 30 million before 20 million. So 30 million is for tablet. 20 million is for smartphone. That is the meaning of respectively. Some people just use this respectively. They don't even know what it means. So now I'm telling you the meaning. However, it goes back to laptop. The sales volume of laptops dropped in February to about 32 million units. And it's even dipped further. This is another thing to represent decrease, language of trend. It's dipped further in March. But in April, it rose to a figure a little higher than the initial volume recorded at the beginning of the year, 53 million units. Can you see? Where is it? 53 million. Let's check. Laptop. Can you see? Higher than what was recorded at the beginning of the year. So it's a little bit higher than what we have here. So that's it. Okay. Then after that, it now moves to the next paragraph. So in paragraph 2, it talks about laptop mainly. And then the paragraph 3 now talks about smartphones and tablets. That's good cohesion. Notice that at the end of each paragraph, there is space. So that's part of good cohesion. One of the ways you demonstrate good cohesion is that at the end of a paragraph, skip a line before you start another paragraph. That's one of the ways you demonstrate good cohesion. In fact, to me, that is actually the best way to demonstrate good cohesion. Okay? So you see space here, skip the line before starting paragraph 2, skip the line before starting paragraph 3. So paragraph 3, the person writes about smartphones. Okay, he picks smartphones first. Smartphones, on the other hand, had the lowest sales volume in January. Smartphones, let's check. Was it the lowest? Can you see color white? Lowest. What does lowest represent? Lowest represents language of what? Language of comparison. Lowest is not on this. Can you see I told you earlier on that there are some words that are not on this list that they represent language of comparison. Lowest. Okay? Lowest represents language of what? Comparison. Lowest sales in January. But the volume increased to about 45 million units in February. And in March, it increased further to a peak figure of about 70 million units. Making it look at this thing here, the most sold products. That sounds like you are comparing. Or you can say making it the best seller. What's the meaning of bestseller? That means more people bought it than other items, making it the best seller for that month. And throughout the first quarter of 2019, look at it. The most sold product, this thing here, laptop. You can see that is higher than what the other figures reported in March, higher than even February figures, higher than January figures, higher than April figures. Okay? Making it the most sold product for that month and throughout the first quarter of 2019. In April, however, this bracket is not necessary. There should be a comma here, not bracket. In April, however, the sales volume plummeted. What is the meaning of plummeted? Plummeted means reduce. It reduced. Okay, so you see that I'm just describing laptop only. I'm focused. This sentence all the way from here till this point is for what? Laptops only. So you pick one category and you describe it all the way till the end before moving to another category. Okay, look at this second part. The online sales trend for tablets followed a similar trend. Okay, or the online sales, this trend should be removed. The online sales for tablets followed a similar trend. It was the second best-selling gadget in January with a figure of 30 million units. The sales volume doubled in February and remained the same in March. However, it dropped to about 20 million in April, making it the item with the lowest. What does lowest represent? Language of comparison. Can you see? Making comparison where relevant. That's bar chart report. Okay, can you say full report I've described there? This is another report here. This one involves what? Language of comparison only. You can see that we have just one day, 2005. Look at it closely. At the bottom, you can't see any other thing. There's nothing like dates here. We have countries here. So here we are going to be using what? Language of comparison only. That's what you have in this report. So the same pattern is what we follow for pie charts. Okay? Pay attention to the words, pay attention to the dates, make sure you use the right language. Okay? Start with a clear introduction that paraphrases the question prompt and that follows the what, where, when formula. Look at the what. The pie chart illustrates data about the online sales of 4 retail sectors. That's the what. Look at the where, Canada. Look at the when, 2005 and 2010. You will see that formula all over this book for database chart. That formula is used all over. That's the formula for your word, for your introduction. What, where, when. Look at this one here now. The pie chart illustrates data about production of what's total energy capacity. That's what. Okay. What's it called now? From 5 different sources. And data is provided for what? When. I mean, this is the when. In some cases, you will not see anything about where. This one now, we can't see anything about where. They didn't mention about any country. There's no figure about the country here. Let me show you. We can't say anything about the country here. It's just proportion of energy capacity. So they didn't specify country here. Okay. So it's just okay. Maybe world's total energy capacity. Okay. So the what, where, and when is a very, very important formula. Look at it. Look at this one here. The bar chart compares the coffee and tea buying habit. That's the what in 5 Australian cities. That's the where. When over the last 4 weeks. When, what, where, and when. You see that formula? You need to keep it in mind. Okay, this one does not have a when. The bar chart depicts leisure activities. That's the what, the where. There's no date here, so there's nothing about when. Okay, what, where, and when. This one, what, the bar chart complies unemployment rates. That's the what, where, 5 European countries, 2005. When. So that introduction must be accurately constructed. After your introduction, you write your word, your overview. Look at this one overview here. Overall, 2 of the sectors recorded decline in sales. So for overview, you look for the categories that reduced, categories that increased, okay? Report them in one sentence. In writing your overview, do not quote percentage figures. Don't write things like 3%, 10% in the overview. All those percentage figures should be written in the main body. If you look at this report, you see that 15% is in the main body. It's not in the overview. Don't quote figures in the overview. Don't quote percentage figures. If you look at this book, all the reports here, you will not see things like 15%, 3,000 in the first paragraph. You will not see it there. You will not see those things there. Look at this one now. You can see it's not there. Okay, let me check another one. Look at this one now. You can see that there's nothing like percentage figures in the introduction, in the overview. Overall, the contributions of some sectors increased, while the contributions of others reduced. There's nothing like percentage figures there. Look at this other one. Overall, compared to other drawbacks, high cost of living was a major disadvantage to many of the visitors. People and the scenery were considered as the most beneficial by many of them. Can you see there's nothing like percentage figures here? So you don't quote percentage figures in your word, in your overview. You just describe the overall trend or highlight the major, what's it called? The categories with the largest figures and the small or the lowest figures. That's what you do in your word, in your overview. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have gotten something from this exercise. Okay, it's been a long class, but then it's just to give you an idea of how to write report. And I've shown you plenty examples. You are going to even see more. I'm going to share this book with you. And then I will share more voice notes examples with you over the next couple of days so that you can really get a hold of this academic task 1 report. Okay, your assignment is going to be from this particular PDF file. So you're going to write a report on. So you have on this PDF file, you have different. This one, you write a report on this. You write a report on this. You see, your assignment is plenty. So I'm going to share these 2 PDF files with you. Okay, one contains your assignments. The other one contains examples for you to study and understand better. And if you have any question, feel free to drop a message in the WhatsApp group. I'm going to attend to it as soon as I can. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.